Hey there everyone, Noir here and welcome to Fan Theories. This will be the final episode in this series, so for the final time, if you have not seen Catghost or if you're new to this series, pause this video and get yourself caught up. This video will contain my final thoughts on the story, so going into it now without being aware of what I'm talking about will not be beneficial for you. Otherwise, let us begin. Episode 13. In spite of its short length, it answered a multitude of questions. It begins with Elon and Malone discussing current events. Elon has finally managed to capture all of the people who were part of the plot that caused her demise, but in doing so she lost Nara, her one and only friend throughout everything. She lusted for control over her destiny and vengeance for her death, which has led her to be a solitary ruler of a dead world. Malone explains to her that the world she inhabits is one of thousands that are created in perpetuity, constantly being born and dying so that a new one can replace it. So what are those worlds? They're games. That's right, you heard me correctly. The reason why Catghost as a series appears to dart around through a variety of different games spanning a myriad of styles, formats and mechanics is because that's what it's always been. The world of Catghost is a game. Some of you may recall that I created a video titled Catghost Fan Theories: The Tech Spirits Theory, where I discussed the potential reason behind the events of the series with regards to it having ARG elements, communicating with the players and actively involving them throughout the story. Even back then, I had the thought that the characters could be trying to break out of their virtual prison, but it appears that I had the reasoning wrong. It wasn't because they died and somehow became trapped in a game, it was because they were always in a game in the first place. Party Country appears to be their mainstay game, or rather their personal dimension. The actual plot behind the game is still unclear, however. Perhaps it was intended to be a game based on the witch trials of Jamestown, using Elon, Nara and Gideon as main characters in the story, so that the creator could tell it from 3 different perspectives. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the story itself, the game plot is quite hard to pin down. As for the games that we played, they give off the impression that they're either mini-games within Party Country, or they're other games that the characters have managed to get into. I'm going for the former since the games stem from the characters' story arcs in some way. So it seems that the characters were never real to begin with, but they were still self-aware enough to try and break out of the very code of the game itself and become real, at least as far as Elon and Nara are concerned. The thing is, something that few people remember is that when we play a game and we have a main character, that character typically can be a virtual extension of ourselves that we use to interact with the game's surroundings. But sometimes, a character already has a personality, a backstory, a life. Sure, it isn't real, it was fabricated by the character's creators, but try and put yourself in those characters' mindsets for a moment. They're programmed to remember the experiences within the story, alongside the actions that are taken by the person that's controlling them. To Elon, she had a past, she has a present, and she can dream of what a future would be because in the story of Catghost, she's a character that has the ability to think for herself and yearns to take hold of that control over where events will take her. Wait. Hold on. The glasses? Wait a second. Was I tricked into assuming that my initial thoughts were false? According to what I'm seeing here, Malone was the one who provided Elon with the knowledge to summon her glasses. Was that the point of the ritual? Was the death of Ascii meant as a blood sacrifice to summon him? But later on in this episode, the Skinwalker tells Elon that it came to be after they failed to properly enact the ritual. So is the repetition of the dimensions and the Skinwalker a byproduct of that? If so, was this Malone's intention all along, to trick Elon into enacting a ritual without the correct parameters? I mean, it certainly looks like that book's missing part of its text, so the punishment could be what I always thought it was. Elon got a wish of immortality, but far from what she intended. She appears to instead be trapped in a loop of dying over and over again. But if that's the case, Is Catghost just a game? Or did they exist before the game and then got trapped in it? What came first? Either way, on to the next part. Malone and Elon argue until Elon is greeted with the Skinwalker, who also turns out to be the Watcher, or the Girl in the Mirror. This is where it tells Elon that it was brought into this dimension when Elon and Nara failed to properly enact the ritual. However, we saw in the last episode that the Skinwalker was also brought into Party Country through a virus, meaning that the Skinwalker had inserted itself into the very fabric of the story and dissected it piece by piece ever since. Then, Elon finally accepts her fate and apologizes to Nara. She gives up on power, which results in Elon, Nara, and Gideon joining together in the key, presumably finally being able to rest. The episode ends with a rock being told by Malone to head out and find more lost souls and guide them onto their rightful path, as well as a frog being given a promotion? Either way, for now, let's look at the game. The game's called Exit, and essentially it depicts a person sat at a computer desk typing away, presumably the creator of Party Country. On occasion, a character will appear that you can click on, which brings up a code. Alright, now let me make something incredibly clear. I hate codes. I know. I'm an analyst that covers series that use codes, ciphers, and puzzles. That's sort of a byproduct for a lot of these things. But the thing is, aside from analysis and incredibly basic decoding knowledge, my ability to decipher code structures that I haven't seen before is abysmal. I tried Ascii, Caesar ciphers, base 64, frequency analysis, JavaScript, hexadecimal, octa, etc. None of these coding languages or techniques use a 4-digit format, and after hours upon hours of searching, I came up empty. I go into these analyses solo, at least for the most part. The reason for this is so that I can ensure that my take on events that transpire in a series aren't coloured by somebody else's interpretation, which means that the viewpoint that you see in these videos, unless I've stated otherwise, is entirely my own. But just like everybody else, I have my failings in certain areas. So to find out what these codes say, you'll have to figure them out for yourselves. My apologies, but that's the way it goes. And that is where the story of Catghost ends. Or at least in the case of Elon's side of the story. The rest of the story is still ongoing, and now you have the ability to actively partake in it. If you go to the Catghost website, you'll find a link to download a new game that's currently being developed. A game that is part of the Catghost story and will be shaped by both its creators and its players. Of course, the game is still in early development, the series has only just finished, but it's certainly one that I'll be keeping an eye on, and I highly suggest taking part in this project and put forward your own thoughts on what could be added to it. This series has been one that I've had an immeasurable amount of admiration for from the very beginning. At every turn, it's never ceased to put a smile on my face and an intriguing array of thoughts in my head, beckoning me to figure it out. And even if I'm never truly able to get to the bottom of what it was all about, even if everything I said turned out to be wrong, I can say without a doubt that I loved every single second of it. Here's to you, Chris and Alexis. I can't wait to see where your brilliant minds take us next. Make sure you keep me in the loop. This also marks the end of fan theories. Yes, I do mean that. This will be the last episode that will use the fan theories format. The reason for this is because from here on out, I'll be focusing on making longer, more in-depth single installments for my analyses. We're at the end of 2019 now, and come 2020, I have a plethora of updates to the channel's content coming from the get-go. Until next time, people, keep on surviving.